It's been a long time since we first heard the term Red Light District. Ever since the start of Season 2 with Wongnan, the supposed prince of the Red Light District, and Repalista's kind of cryptic warnings and the title of that segment, that section of Season 2. But we finally got some theories confirmed. More importantly, maybe not even just saying theories confirmed, we learned what the Red Light District really is. At least, we think so. This last chapter, chapter 640 of Tower of God, it's been a day. I've had time to process it, and yet I'm still just as frazzled and razzled and dazzled as I was when I first read it, because this is the result of over a decade of setup from SIU, and the way that he's pulled all this together is pretty awesome. So the first thing I thought when I read this chapter was, oh, the place that Blossom destroyed was the Red Light District. I'd actually totally forgotten that we had learned that the Red Light District had burned to the ground, according to a Wangnan flashback when he talks about his nanny to Karaka. But we do know that Blossom destroyed a place. We then learned that this is a precursor that leads to the events of the sort of discovery and usage of the true Red Light District. The place that Blossom burned to the ground, we don't actually know fully what it is, but what I do find interesting is that we know in the blog posts that apparently Blossom has the capability and power to wipe out an entire floor if she wants to. That is how much control she has over Shinsu. It's possible that this is a reference to what she did and what was revealed in this chapter, and maybe it was an accident. Like, her Shinsu control is so insanely potent and even maybe wild, right? The capabilities and the possibilities are almost endless, perhaps, that she regrets it. And that's why she chooses to enter her dreams and spend most of her time sleeping. It's a beautiful way to explain why her family, like even her descendants like Lauro and Cherry La, Irude, why they kind of inherit that sleeping capability from her. Maybe in her case, the original like sleepy character, it's because she likes to dream so much and she prefers to spend time in her dreams, which means she doesn't develop or mature as quickly as the others. Bit of a tangent there, but I found it really interesting. The place that she destroyed leads to Gustang working with Traumarai to try to resurrect those people and rectify his wife's mistake, because he's torn between following his own moral code and the will of the people, even if Traumarai views them as insignificant, versus taking care of his family, his wife, and his future generations. And he tries to do a middle ground. He tries to do both, and it leads to the destruction of both, which I think is very beautiful and poetic writing from SIU, where he tries to help his wife and help the people, but Traumarai, because he's a bit of a dumbass, he ends up creating a disgusting zombie amalgamation of the people instead. He brings them back. The wording here is talking about how he resurrects the spirits of these fallen warriors who were sleeping and they were in peace, they were resting, but now they're in eternal torment. Traumarai did kind of make them immortal, but in an immortal misery and not these like angelic beings that Gustang was envisioning. And it reminds me a lot of Envy from Full Metal Alchemist. This leads Gustang to kind of be traumatized by this event. Like, again, the decisions, we see this in an earlier chapter where he says, every time I try to make the right decision, it leads to a bad ending. So current Gustang just doesn't care about it anymore. He knows it's probably going to lead to a bad ending, but at this point, why follow his own, like, why follow what is good if it's going to lead to bad? I might as well just do whatever I want if it's going to lead to bad. Anyway, I feel like we start to see the seeds and the roots of that here, where he's like, no matter what I do, it's bad. So instead, I'm just going to run away from it. I'm going to erase it. And it's not as simple as just, you know, forget a thing here and there. I love the line where he says, I thought it was my first time forgetting something, but now looking back, I had probably done it countless times. But of course, if you're erasing your own memory, you're not going to remember erasing your own memory. So of course to him, yeah, he could have done it 100 times or one time, and he's just as knowledgeable about that. I think that's so cool. So he goes to Jahad, which surprises Jahad, and he says, hey, the red garbage dump, you know, the red trash can you mentioned, I'm in. And we get this sick shot of the family leaders, and we finally learn that the Red Light District is supposedly and apparently a space between the layers of the tower. The outer tower is like a lot of residential area and a lot of unexplored territory. A lot of like people native to the tower live there. And then the middle area can be a residential area as well, but it's in between the outer and the middle. But apparently, even in between those layers, there's also this void almost with this red light that incinerates and burns everything within it like an incinerator. Gusting literally says that Jahad called it an incinerator. This place is supposed, I mean, if we connect the dots here and assume that the red light is significant in that it's talking about this place that people are discarded to, like sorcerers and guides that make wrong turns and give bad advice, and everybody that gets in the way of what they want, fundamentalists, that is just toss them in there and it's like they never even existed. See, it's not like Gusting is forgetting. Because if Gusting simply forgot about it, someone else is going to remember it, and so it still really happened. But if Gusting forgets about it, and everybody who remembered it, and everything that links to it is erased from existence, it basically didn't happen, right? Like, if no one remembers it, and no trace of it exists, did it really happen? We're getting into some philosophy here. But Gusting's moral quandary, his rules and restrictions on himself that he apparently is so bound to, it follows him here, and it kind of screws him over because he still writes about it. He can't reach that area of like no one remembering, it's completely non-existent. No, he still has to record it in the book. He has to. He is the ultimate historian. He cannot bend that part of himself no matter what he does, right? Even though so much is on the line. And what I think is so cool about this is that we see when current Gusting tries to regain his memories from the book, he like basically locked himself out of it and says, we're all sinners. It's a direct reference to this entire chapter talking about the greatest sins of the family heads. Gusting himself included in this. He sees what he did, what he and Traumarai did, and all the events with Blossom and everything as the greatest sin, one of the greatest burdens he has. And it's so good. So good. I don't know. What do you say? It's good. This place is the Red Light District. The way that Hua Ryun in early season 2 talks about Wongnan is that Wongnan is one of the greatest mistakes of the families, right? Something to be discarded, something that shouldn't have existed. It's all matching up with what we know about the Red Light District. The way that Bellerir talked about where he came from, he talks about how he doesn't remember much about the place, but that there are red lamps that people die under. If this is a garbage dump that things are tossed into, and then there's this red light, I don't know if it's like an administrator thing or what the red light is supposed to signify, but if it just incinerates people, then of course, if you're under the red lamp, you die. Bellerir is being literal when he says the red lamps kill you. And of course, in the Wongnan flashback where he talks about his surrogate mother, he talks about how the place was burned to the ground. Well, if this red light incinerates things, perhaps these little civilizations are built within there. Like, people can still survive if they're careful, and they almost see the red light as this alien thing that's chasing after them. Maybe I'm taking the red light too literally or too significantly, but the way I see it is that you can have a life in there, but if the red light catches you, you're done, right? So maybe like wherever they lived, it really was burnt to the ground. Maybe like it's constantly, everything in there is constantly being burned to the ground. And what I find interesting about Wangnan's mother here, his adopted kind of his nanny, is that when they escape the Red Light District, she reveals she never loved him, and that she was given a task by the king to take care of the king's seed, and she wishes she could have raised the king's seed more properly. So this is, of course, directly linking Wangnan to Jahad, as if we needed that with how similarly they look. But more importantly, at the end of that last chapter, 640, we get the biggest revelation. Eurasia Ann is discovering things. The princess system. She's discovering secrets about Jahad. Traumarai has a bunch of secrets out. Who knows if she discovered some of that? But more importantly, for this, for this context, she discovers the existence of the Red Light District. And more specifically, that Jahad trapped himself in there. Jahad trapped himself in there. Wongnan and Karaka and the boss are apparently all, and Bellerir for that record, are apparently all from the Red Light District. Is it possible that Wangnan and Karaka and the boss, there's possibly two of them, we don't really know, are all aspects of Jahad? This has been a popular theory for a long time, and it's kind of shocking to me to see one of the longest running theories in the community potentially confirmed in a single chapter. It starts off with Hugo fighting Michelle, is fun and stuff, and then at the end we're discovering possibly one of the most monumental lore drops in the entire series up until this point. It's insane. And it's thematic as well, though, Because I went back and reread that chapter where Jahad is, Wongnan, who might be Jahad apparently, is talking to Karaka. And after he shares the story to Karaka, and Karaka is asking for Wongnan's ring as proof, which I'm going to get to, Wongnan says, that's why I'm going to be king of the tower, because I want to take down just this. Jahad is this awful guy, I can't wait to tear him down from his throne. Imagine the thematic significance of Wongnan wanting to tear himself down, where he discovers that he is a part of this king that he loathes, right? Going back to the ring thing, why do all these people from the Red Light District have Jahad rings? Karaka was willing. He said, I'll tell you everything, Wongnan. I will tell you everything I know about the Red Light District if you show me your ring. Now, of course, Rachel had the ring at this point. What is insane about this is that we know from Rachel that the rings are the keys to the 135th floor, which means that one of the things that Jahad tossed in there, aside from maybe aspects of himself, are the keys to the 135th floor. This gets even crazier when you discover that it makes sense that Eurasia Ann discovered the princess stuff alongside the Red Light District stuff, because what is the other key, aside from the rings, to the 135th floor? The 13-month weapons, which Jahad intentionally scatters amongst the princesses. The link is so easily there. If Eurasia N is discovering more about the princess system, it's naturally going to lead to the 13 months, which is naturally going to lead to Jahad rings and the other keys and the Red Light District. You could claim that some of this stuff is just coinciding and we're linking things that don't make sense. I think it makes perfect sense that she's discovering all these things together, and I gotta, again, hats off to SIU. Let's talk about this aspect thing for a second. This theory that Wongnan and Karaka and the boss represent different aspects of Jahad. It makes a lot of sense. When the sword from the hidden floor is talking to Wongnan, he says that he is always sad, but with a smile. I think this is a beautiful way to describe Wongnan. He's a character who has endured countless hardships and yet always tries to be optimistic with his friends, and especially after meeting Team Sweet and Sour and everything. I think, God, Wongnan's such a goated character. I can't believe we got Wongnan lore in this chapter. Significant lore about Wongnan, and we haven't seen the guy in years at this point. A third of the series. Think about that. It's been a third of the series without Wongnan. My boy, I miss him so much. If Wongnan represents the sort of self-loathing or self-guilt of Jahad, or maybe even he has the desire to be king, it's possible that there's some of that mingled in there. The very first time we see Wongnan, he says, I'm going to be king of the tower. I mean, come on. But Karaka could also represent this sort of hatred, maybe, this desire, this jealousy, maybe a little more of the, I don't want to say uglier sides, but maybe a bit more of the aggression, or even just the revenge aspect. Karaka was handpicked by Fug to be a slayer. Every slayer in Thug has a target, right? So White's target is Hone. We don't really know who Yama's target is. Some people speculate it could be Traumarai because of his connection to Lipobia. We don't have that confirmed though, and it would a lot of questions we raised. Regardless, Karaka's target is Jahad. Why would Fug think that Karaka has what it takes to take down Jahad? I love Karaka, but you think Karaka can kill Jahad? Unless they are aware, and even Karaka himself is aware, that the reason he can take down Jahad is because he is Jahad, or at least a part of him. Then we have the captain, the boss, this kind of gladiatorial champion, he called himself. Maybe a bit more of the adventurous side, more battle hungry. You know, Jahad loved to fight. We see that on the hidden floor. I think a lot of that can be seen in this revolution captain boss character. And of course, there's also the Doan and Cha boss. We don't know if it's the same one. He has a mole. It's kind of weird. He's more manipulative. If there is a fourth one and he's the fourth one, it's totally possible that he represents another aspect of Jahad even. Another crazy part about Wongnan and these other characters is their immortality. Wongnan was stabbed through the heart by Beta. His arm was almost entirely cut off by Joaquin, and after all these weird things, he was incinerated by Iwa. After all of these moments, he's survived, and the series itself has commented on it and been like, how in the hell did Wongnan survive that? He's just an ordinary guy, supposedly, and yet he's almost essentially immortal. He's been possessed, you know, everything under the sun has happened to Wongnan, and he's fine for it. And Karaka has a sort of immortality as well, albeit because of his armor, potentially. But if they are aspects of Jahad, it makes total sense why they would have this semi-immortality. So one idea is, why did Jahad do this? Why did Jahad toss different parts of himself into this place? Again, it's possible that these are not parts of himself and it's like a cloning thing, but I think if he really did lock himself in there, I think this is the likely explanation, then it's possible he did this to shape himself into the perfect king. He discarded every part of himself that would give him morality or weaken him in some way, and so now he is a flawless, perfect king that will lead the tower to greater heights, or him and his friends to greater heights. We don't know the exact timeline, like, did he do this supposedly, or I would assume he did this after the Great War with Arlen and V, so maybe a lot of ugliness that Jahad saw himself, he could have discarded it away, and that ugliness could have formed and become, like, literally clones of himself and these other characters. I think that's the likely explanation. I see there's a lot of stories that I've been playing lately, and there's one in particular, I won't spoil it because it's kind of a new game, but there's this aspect of this where it's like this king or this ruler, they don't want to become, they know that if they remain the way that they are, they won't be able to morally make the decisions that will save their people. And so what do? They erase those parts of themselves to become the king that they need to be. Now, of course, Jahad, not a great king, so I don't know if it worked, but I do think that would make Jahad more sympathetic rather than like, I did all this so I could be evil and live a luxurious life. I feel like there's more to it than that, especially since he's trying to hide the keys to the 135th floor. Why? That's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. Really quick, also, I like that when Wangnan and Karaka are talking in chapter 343, when Wangnan says, oh, I'm from the red light district, he takes off the mask, and Karaka's like, oh my god. Like, there's this look of realization. Just another cool thing I noticed that links them all together. So what about Bellerir? Bellerir doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's kind of one aspect of all this that I think is kind of strange, because does Gustang also have a clone in there? Or maybe like Gustang had a bastard that he wanted to get rid of? I don't know. I think that ultimately, I had a fun theory yesterday in yesterday's stream about like the tattoo on Bellerir's forehead. The frick is that about? Was that the manifestation of Gustang erasing the memory of that monster? And that's why his forehead tattoo looks like a monster. Rock solid theory, I will say. Tying it all together, let's bring it back to where it all started with Wongnan. Wongnan is specifically stated by SIU to be old. He's a test taker that's been trying to take this test for years and years and years and years. He's around the same age as Karaka, according to SIU. One of the coolest things was shown to me yesterday. Something that most of you probably have never seen, because it wasn't included in the official chapters on Webtoon. There was this sort of bonus chapter that SIU released after Season 1 concluded, but before the start of Season 2, where he answers some questions, he shows some cool, like, backstory elements, stuff we've talked about, like Leiro Ro and Yuri meeting when they were on the second floor, right, taking tests together, and all these, like, fun little tidbits of information from SIU. And one of the things that he teases is the introduction of Wongnan. And when he introduces Wongnan, the first time we see him, he is laying on a pile of garbage. This blew my mind when I saw it yesterday. I don't know. Are we jumping to conclusions here? Or are you telling me that SIU has had most of this red light district stuff mapped out since over a decade ago? I don't think it's a coincidence that the very first time SIU decides to tease Wongnan, he's resting amongst trash, and the sign behind him literally says trash. I don't think it's a coincidence that the place he comes from is known as the Red Garbage Dump, the Red Light District, where if you remain under that light, you are incinerated. So fascinating. I think the writing has been spectacular from SIU, and I'm very excited to see where he takes this. I have faith. He's been cooking lately. That's an understatement. So I'm excited. What are you guys' thoughts? Any theories, ideas? Comment down below. Appreciate all of you, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care.